Okay, today we're going to talk about compound probability, and that is a mathematical term relating to the likeliness of two independent events occurring. Okay, and independent events are just where the outcome of one doesn't affect the outcome of the other. Okay, so for example, if I were to spin this spinner and roll this dice, does what I spin on the spinner have anything to do with this dice? No, one does not affect the other. If I were to spin this spinner and then spin it again, does my first spin have any impact on my second? No, so they're independent events. Okay, so let's look at this question right here. So it says, what would be the probability of spinning the spinner and landing on green and then rolling a dice and landing on 5? Okay, so first of all, let's look at this spinner. Okay, there are 8 sections and 1, 2, 3 of them are green. So the chances that I spin this spinner and land on green are 3 over 8. Okay, then I'm going to take a dice. This is just a regular 6-sided dice, and I'm going to roll it. So what are the chances that I land on 5? So on a regular dice, how many sides have the number 5? Just 1 out of 6. Okay, and now I'm going to multiply these fractions together. So before I do that though, I can go ahead and see if I can simplify them at all or cross-reduce. So like here, what are 3 and 6 both divisible by? They're both divisible by 3. 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So now when I multiply across the top, 1 times 1 is 1, and 8 times 2 is 16. And that's all a compound probability is. It's the same thing we did last week with one probability, but there's 2 of them, so we multiply them together. Okay, let's look down here where it's talking about rolling dice. Okay, so we're gonna roll our number cube or our dice. Okay, if I roll it the first time, what are the chances that I get a 1? Okay, it's 1 out of 6 because there's only one side that's 1 on a dice. And then what's the chances that I roll it again and get a 2? 1 out of 6. So 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 6 is 36. Okay, and it's only 1 because there's only one number 2 on the dice. Okay, so what are the chances that I roll it and get a 3? Well, that's 1 out of 6. And then how many of the numbers on a dice are even? Right, so I should have 2, 4, and 6. So that's half of the numbers, right? That's 3 out of 6, or half. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 6 times 2 is 12. Hey, we're always writing our answers as simplified fractions. And then something that I'm not sure if I explained this, but when you have the letter P and then this inside parentheses, it means what's the probability of, and then these events. Okay, so on my dice, what's the probability that I roll something greater than a 4? So what numbers are greater than 4? 5 and 6. So that's 2 out of 6 sides on my dice are greater than 4. And then the chances that I get a 1 are 1 out of 6. Okay, and you could have already done this, but I am going to recognize that 2 over 6 can be simplified to 1 over 3. So now when I multiply across, 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, on my dice, how many numbers are greater than 1? So you have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's 5 over 6 numbers, or 5 out of 6 numbers that are greater than 1. And then how many numbers are 7? On my dice, what are the chances, what's the probability that I roll my dice and get a 7? It's 0, right? There's no 7 on my dice. Okay, and this dice is kind of weird because it has the numbers written out. But there's no 7 on here anywhere because it's 1 through 6. So the chances of these 2 events happening are 0. Okay, there's no way that I could say, I will bet you $1 million that you can't roll something greater than 1 and a 7, right? Because there's no 7 on the dice, so it has a probability of 0. Okay, so let's look down here at this bottom section. It says you draw 2 cards from the pile at the right replacing the first one. Okay, the replacing part's important. Tomorrow we're going to talk about when you don't replace it and then what happens. Okay, so first thing, let's look at our cards. It says, what's the probability that I pick the letter A? So there's one letter A out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. So the probability of me getting an A is 1 out of 8. Okay, then I put my card back. What are the chances now that I pull out the Z card? 1 out of 8 again. So that would be 1 out of 64. Okay, on the next one, what's the probability that my first card that I pick is gray? Well, there's 5 out of 8 that are gray. Okay, and then I put my card back. I go to the next person. What are their chances that they pick the letter L? 1 out of 8. So 5 times 1 is 5, and then 8 times 8 would be 64. Okay, and then the last one, what's the probability that my first draw is a vowel? So which ones are vowels? We're combining English with math. Okay, well there's A, O, and E. So that's 3 out of 8. Okay, I pick my card, I put it back, I go to the next person. What's the probability that their pick is a white card? 1, 2, 3 out of 8. Okay, 3 times 3 is 9, 8 times 8 is 64, and I'm done because none of those can be simplified. So when you have two events happening, we're just going to multiply the probabilities together.